I showed up to Christmas dinner with a cast on my foot and a voice recorder in my pocket. My son laughed in my face and said, I deserved it. Then the doorbell rang. I looked at him and said, come in, officer. I showed up to Christmas dinner at 2:47 p.m. with a cast on my right foot, a wheelchair I didn't actually need, and a voice recorder in my pocket. My daughter-in-law Monica had decorated everything beautifully, turkey glistening on the table, candles flickering in the windows, a 12-foot tree in the corner covered in ornaments my late wife had collected over 40 years of marriage. The house smelled like cinnamon and roasted meat and betrayal. My son Jeffrey greeted me at the door with that practiced look of concern he'd been perfecting for months. Dad, you look tired. How's the foot healing? Getting better, I said, letting him push my wheelchair into the dining room. Doctor says another 6 weeks in the cast. Monica appeared from the kitchen, wiping her hands on an apron, her smile as fake as the sympathy in her voice. Marcus, we're so glad you could make it. We were worried about you after your accident. Accident. That's what they were calling it. An accident. 3 days ago, this woman had placed both hands on my back and pushed me down a flight of concrete stairs. I'd heard the bone in my foot snap on impact, screamed more from shock than pain. And when I'd looked up from the ground, blood running from a gash on my forehead, she'd been standing at the top of the stairs with an expression I'll never forget. Not horror, not concern, not even indifference. Satisfaction. Then Jeffrey had walked out, looked down at me bleeding on the concrete, and laughed. She just taught you a lesson, Dad. You deserved it. They'd left me there. Didn't call for help. Didn't offer a hand. Just walked back inside like I was garbage they'd deal with later. My neighbor Frank found me 20 minutes later, called 911, rode with me to the hospital. But here's what my son and his wife didn't know. I'd been watching them for months, recording everything. And that fall, captured in crystal clear 1080p on a hidden camera I'd installed 3 weeks earlier. I looked at the clock on the wall. 2:52 p.m. 8 minutes until the doorbell would ring. Let's eat, Monica said brightly. Before everything gets cold. I'm Marcus Whitmore, 67 years old, retired electrical engineer, widower for 14 months. I'd been living alone in the house my wife Eleanor and I had shared for 38 years when Jeffrey and Monica moved in, claiming they were worried about me. You shouldn't be alone, Dad, Jeffrey had said, his voice dripping with concern that I now know was rehearsed. Not after losing Mom. Let us take care of you. I'd believed him. Why wouldn't I? He was my son, the boy I'd raised, coached in Little League, taught to drive, put through college, the man who'd held my hand at Eleanor's funeral and promised he'd always be there for me. Monica had seemed perfect for him. 34 years old, beautiful in that polished way that suggested careful maintenance, with a warm smile and an easy laugh. They'd been married for 2 years before Eleanor died, and Monica had been nothing but kind to us during those years. Brought casseroles when Eleanor was sick, helped with the funeral arrangements, sat with me during the darkest nights of grief. I'd welcomed them into my home with open arms. The money requests started 6 weeks later. Dad, Monica found this amazing career development course, Jeffrey said over dinner one night. It's $47,000, but it would really help her advance at work. Could you help us out? I wrote the check without hesitation. What's money compared to family? 3 weeks later. Dad, Monica's mother needs surgery. The insurance won't cover it. We need $32,000. I transferred the funds that same day. A month after that, there's this investment opportunity. A friend of mine is starting a tech company. If we get in early, we could triple our money. We just need $45,000 to start. I was starting to feel uneasy. But I'd already given so much. What was a little more? By the time I finally started questioning things, I'd given them nearly $280,000. Most of my retirement savings. Most of what Eleanor and I had worked our entire lives to build. But the money wasn't even the worst part. The worst part happened on a Sunday morning, 8 months after they moved in. I'd woken up early. Old habits from decades of work don't die easily. And was walking past their bedroom door when I heard voices. Low, conspiratorial. The kind of whispered conversation people have when they don't want to be overheard. I stopped, held my breath, listened. Monica's voice came first, casual, cold, like she was discussing what to have for dinner. When is the old man going to die? We can't wait 30 years for this inheritance. My blood froze in my veins. Jeffrey's laugh was nervous, uncomfortable. Don't talk like that, Monica. I'm serious. We need to speed things up, or at least get legal control before he becomes completely senile. Did you see him yesterday? He asked me the same question 3 times. He's just grieving. He's not senile. He will be. They all get that way eventually. And when he does, we need to be ready. I've been talking to Julian about the process for declaring someone mentally incompetent. Julian. A name I didn't recognize, but I would learn it soon enough. That seems extreme, Jeffrey said, but there was no conviction in his voice. No defense of his father. Just mild discomfort at the logistics. It's practical. Once we have power of attorney, we control everything. The house, the investments, the life insurance, all of it. Life insurance. Eleanor had insisted we both carry policies. Mine was worth $400,000. And if he doesn't cooperate, Jeffrey asked, he won't have a choice. We'll have doctors, lawyers, witnesses, all saying he can't take care of himself. By the time we're done, he'll be in a nursing home signing whatever we put in front of him. I stood in that hallway, 66 years old, listening to my only son discuss my death and incapacitation like it was a business problem to to be solved. My hands were shaking. My heart was pounding so hard, I thought they might hear it through the door. I'd raised this boy, changed his diapers, taught him to ride a bike, paid for his education, loved him unconditionally for 28 years, and he was planning to have me declared incompetent so his wife could steal my money. That was the day the old Marcus died. The trusting father, the naive widower, the man who believed family meant something. Someone new took his place. I didn't confront them, didn't cry, didn't do any of the things a normal person might do after discovering their son was planning to destroy them. Instead, I started planning. The first call I made was to Mitchell Torres, a private investigator I'd found through careful research. Mitch was 53 years old, former FBI, 22 years of experience in financial crimes and fraud investigation. His office was in a strip mall between a nail salon and a tax preparation service, but his reputation was impeccable. I need to know everything about my daughter-in-law, I told him at our first meeting. Her past, her finances, her connections, everything. Mitch studied me across his cluttered desk. You sure about this, Mr. Whitmore? Sometimes people find things they wish they hadn't, I'm sure. What Mitch found made me sick. Monica's real name was Monica Chen. She'd changed it legally to Monica Reyes 5 years ago, probably to make her harder to trace. Before marrying my son, she'd been married once before, to a 72-year-old retired dentist named Harold Swanson. Harold had died 11 months after the wedding, heart attack, according to the official records. But his family had been suspicious. They'd hired lawyers, demanded investigations, tried to contest the will that left Monica $500,000. They'd failed. No evidence of foul play. Just an old man with a young wife who got very lucky, very quickly. 2 years later, Monica had met Jeffrey at a conference. Young, single, only child of a wealthy widower. I wasn't her first target. I was her specialty. Mitch also found the apartment, a luxury condo downtown, $3,200 a month, paid for with wire transfers from my accounts. They'd go there to live in comfort while eating my food and sleeping in my house and planning my demise. And then there was Julian Price, attorney at law, specializing in elder law and conservatorship proceedings. Monica had been meeting with him for 3 months, building a case, documenting my supposed decline. They were going to have me committed. Armed with this information, I did something that surprised even myself. I played along. I started forgetting things, asked the same questions twice, left pots on the stove, pretended to be confused about what day it was. Monica took the bait immediately. I'd catch her exchanging knowing looks with Jeffrey whenever I repeated myself. She started inviting friends over for dinner. Witnesses, I realized, to my deteriorating mental state. Marcus seems to be having some trouble remembering things, she'd say in a stage whisper loud enough for me to hear. We're worried about him, but we want to keep him at home as long as possible. What a devoted daughter-in-law. What a saint. Meanwhile, I was building my own case. I contacted Victoria Chen, no relation to Monica, a corporate attorney I'd worked with years ago. She referred me to her partner, Robert Hernandez, who specialized in elder abuse cases. This is more common than people realize, Robert told me during our first meeting. Adult children and their spouses targeting elderly parents for their assets. The key is documentation. We need evidence of their intent, their actions, and the harm they've caused. I started installing cameras. Small, wireless, nearly invisible. One in the living room, hidden in a bookshelf. One in the kitchen, tucked behind a decorative plant. One on the front porch, disguised as a doorbell camera. One at the top of the stairs that would soon become the scene of Monica's biggest mistake. Every conversation was recorded, every whispered plan, every meeting with Julian Price. I also changed my will, quietly, through a different attorney in a different city. Everything I owned would go to charity upon my death, specifically to organizations supporting elder abuse victims. Jeffrey and Monica would get nothing. Not that I planned to die anytime soon. The push happened on December 22nd, 3 days before Christmas. I'd been particularly convincing that morning, pretending to forget where I'd put my car keys, while actually watching Monica's reaction. She'd looked at Jeffrey with that expression, that impatient, calculating expression, and something had shifted in the air. I was walking down the front porch steps, heading to check the mail, when I felt hands on my back. 2 hands, flat palms, a hard shove. The world tilted. I grabbed for the railing but missed, felt myself falling forward, momentum carrying me down the concrete steps. My foot hit first at a bad angle, and I heard the snap before I felt the pain. I screamed, landed hard on the walkway, my head striking the edge of a paving stone. Blood immediately started running into my eye. I looked up. Monica stood at the top of the stairs, backlit by the morning sun, her face in shadow, but I could see enough. The set of her shoulders, the tilt of her head. She wasn't surprised. She wasn't concerned. She was satisfied. Jeffrey appeared behind her, looked down at me, his father, bleeding and broken on the ground, and let out a short, ugly laugh. She just taught you a lesson, Dad. You deserved it. Then they turned around and walked back inside. The door closed. I heard the lock engage. I lay there for 20 minutes before Frank from next door found me. 20 minutes of pain and blood and the crystal clear realization that my son had watched his wife try to kill me, and his only response had been laughter. The ambulance took me to Mercy General. Dr. Patricia Walsh, emergency medicine, cleaned my wounds wounds and put a cast on my fractured foot. She asked careful questions about how I'd fallen. I tripped, I told her. Clumsy of me. She didn't believe me. I could see it in her eyes, but she didn't push. Just handed me a card for Adult Protective Services and said, "If you ever need to talk to someone, Mr. Whitmore, we have resources." I took the card, but I had my own resources, and I had a plan. The first thing I did when I got home was check my cameras. The footage was perfect. Clear angle of the top of the stairs. Monica checking over her shoulder to make sure no one was watching, positioning herself behind me. The push, deliberate, forceful, unmistakable. Then my scream, my fall, the sound of impact, and Jeffrey's voice, captured by the porch camera's microphone. "She just taught you a lesson, Dad. You deserved it." I watched it 3 times, let the rage wash through me. Then I got to work. I called Sergeant Patricia Williams at the Phoenix Police Department's Elder Abuse Unit. She'd been recommended by Robert Hernandez, 23 years on the force, specializing in crimes against seniors. "Mr. Whitmore, what you're describing is aggravated assault," Sergeant Williams said after viewing the footage. "Possibly attempted murder given your age and the nature of the fall. We can arrest them immediately." "Not yet," I said. "I want to do this on Christmas." She paused. "That's unusual. My daughter-in-law is planning something for Christmas. A dinner party with witnesses, including her lawyer. She wants to demonstrate my mental decline to a room full of people. I want to demonstrate something else." "What exactly?" "The truth. We spent 2 days planning." Sergeant Williams coordinated with her team. Robert Hernandez prepared documentation of all the money I'd transferred to Jeffrey and Monica, evidence of financial exploitation. Mitch Torres compiled his investigation into Monica's past, including the death of Harold Swanson, and I prepared my performance. Christmas dinner was at my house, technically since Jeffrey and Monica had never bothered to change the deed or put their names on any of the bills. I was wheeled in like a fragile old man, hunched in my chair, playing the part they expected me to play. The guest list was revealing. Julian Price was there, Monica's conservatorship lawyer, notebook in hand, like he was ready to document more evidence of my incompetence. 2 of Monica's friends, Karen and Deborah, had been invited as additional witnesses. Jeffrey's old college roommate, Brian, was there with his wife, probably to lend an air of normalcy. They'd set everything up perfectly. The beautiful decorations, the elaborate meal, the concerned daughter-in-law fussing over her fragile father-in-law. Monica served lunch at 2:30 p.m. I didn't need anything she'd prepared, hadn't touched her cooking in months, ever since I'd found those meeting notes with Julian about the process taking time and natural causes being preferable. Instead, I watched the clock. 2:45 p.m., 2:50 p.m. Halfway through the meal, I launched my performance, looked around the table with a confused expression. "Is it Easter already? I thought Easter was in the spring." Monica's eyes lit up. She exchanged a look with Julian, who immediately started writing in his notebook. "No, Dad," Jeffrey said gently, his voice dripping with fake concern. "It's Christmas, December 25th. Remember?" I frowned, pretended to think about it. "Christmas. Yes, of course, I knew that. I just got confused for a moment." Karen leaned over to Deborah and whispered something. More witnesses, more documentation of my decline. 2:55 p.m. I asked about the turkey. Where had they gotten it? Was it from the same place Eleanor used to buy them? "Eleanor's been gone for over a year, Dad," Jeffrey said. "Remember?" I let my face crumple, let tears well in my eyes. "Of course I remember. Sometimes I forget she's not coming back." Monica reached over and patted my hand, her touch reptilian. "It's okay, Marcus. We're here for you. We'll take care of everything." Julian wrote another note. The trap was set. 2:58 p.m. I looked at the clock, then at my son, then at Monica, who was smiling at me with that predatory patience she'd perfected over years of hunting old men. 2:59 p.m. I stood up from the wheelchair. The room went silent. Everyone froze mid-motion. Forks suspended, glasses halfway to lips, conversations dying in throats. "Dad," Jeffrey said, his voice uncertain. "What are you?" 3 p.m. The doorbell rang. Monica jumped up immediately. "I'll get it." "No." My voice was steady, clear, stronger than it had been in months. "It's my house. I'll answer my own door." I walked, not shuffled, not hobbled, to the front door. I could feel their eyes on my back, could hear the confused whispers starting behind me. I opened the door. Sergeant Patricia Williams stood on my porch in full uniform, badge gleaming. Behind her were 2 additional officers. Mitch Torres was there with his laptop. Robert Hernandez carried a thick folder of documentation. "Officers," I said, loud enough for everyone in the dining room to hear. "Thank you for coming. Please come in." The dining room had gone completely silent when we walked back in. 8 faces stared at us, some confused, some frightened. One, Julian Price, already edging toward the back door. "Who are these people?" Monica demanded, but her voice had gone high and tight. "What's going on?" "Mrs. Whitmore," Sergeant Williams said, stepping forward. "I'm Sergeant Patricia Williams, Phoenix Police Department, Elder Abuse Unit. I have some questions for you regarding an incident that occurred on December 22nd. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Then let me show you." Mitch had already connected his laptop to the television. The same TV where Monica had probably planned to show photos of happy family moments, evidence of what a caring daughter-in-law she was. Instead, the screen filled with footage from my porch camera. Everyone watched. The entire room, Jeffrey, Monica, Julian, Karen, Deborah, Brian, and his wife, all of them watched as Monica checked for witnesses, positioned herself himself behind me and pushed. They heard my scream, watched me fall, saw the blood. Then Jeffrey's voice, crystal clear through the speakers. "She just taught you a lesson, Dad. You deserved it." Karen gasped. Deborah's hand flew to her mouth. Brian's wife looked like she might be sick. Julian Price was no longer edging toward the door. He was pressed against the wall, probably calculating how much his association with Monica was about to cost him. That's edited," Monica stammered. "That's fake. He fell. He's been falling a lot lately. He's confused. We've had the footage analyzed by forensic video experts," Sergeant Williams interrupted. "It's authentic, unedited, time-stamped and verified." Monica's face went white, then red, then a shade of purple I'd never seen on a human being before. "This is entrapment. You set me up. Mrs. Whitmore." Sergeant Williams's voice was calm, professional, utterly final. "You're under arrest for aggravated assault. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law." An officer moved toward Monica with handcuffs. She tried to run, actually tried to bolt for the back door, but he caught her in 3 steps. She started screaming that I'd faked everything, that the evidence was fabricated, that they were all going to be sorry. Jeffrey had collapsed against the wall, not moving to help his wife, not moving to do anything, just standing there with tears running down his face. Not tears of remorse, I could tell, but tears of self-pity, tears for himself, for his plans falling apart, for the inheritance he'd just lost. "Mr. Jeffrey Whitmore," Sergeant Williams continued, "you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit assault and financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult. I didn't push him. I wasn't even there when you watched your wife assault your father and your response was to laugh and tell him he deserved it. You've also been complicit in a scheme to have your father declared mentally incompetent in order to gain control of his assets." She nodded at the folder Robert was holding. "We have documentation of over $280,000 in fraudulent transfers. We have recordings of your conversations with your wife about speeding things up, and we have testimony from Mr. Harold Swanson's family about your wife's previous activities." Jeffrey's face went gray. Harold Swanson? Her first husband, the one who died 11 months after the wedding, the one whose family tried very hard to prove foul play. Sergeant Williams let that sink in. "Your wife has a pattern, Mr. Whitmore, and you were helping her repeat it." The officers cuffed them both. Monica was still screaming, threats and denials mixing together in an incoherent stream of rage. Jeffrey had gone completely silent, staring at the floor, defeated. Before they led my son out the door, I walked over to him, looked him in the eyes, the same eyes I'd looked into when he was a baby, when he was a boy, when he was a young man I thought would make me proud. "You stopped being my son," I said quietly, "the moment you laughed at my pain." He opened his mouth, tried to speak, maybe an apology, maybe an excuse, maybe just more lies. I raised my hand. "Save it for the judge." The officers led them out. Monica's screams echoed down the hallway until the patrol car door slammed shut and everything went quiet. I turned back to the dining room. 7 people were still there, frozen at my Christmas table. Julian Price looked like he wanted to disappear into the wallpaper. Karen and Deborah were crying. Brian's wife was holding onto her husband like she'd just witnessed a horror movie. I walked to my seat at the head of the table, the seat my father had sat in, and his father before him, the seat I'd shared with Eleanor for nearly 4 decades of Christmas dinners. I picked up my wine glass, took a long, slow sip. "Dinner's over," I said. "Everyone can go home." They left quickly. No one made eye contact. No one said goodbye. Julian Price practically ran to his car. I made a mental note to have Robert file a bar complaint against him first thing in the morning. Then it was just me, alone in the house that had held so much love and so much betrayal. I sat there for a long time, looking at the tree, at the ornaments Eleanor had collected, at the empty chairs where my son and his wife had been sitting. Then I called Frank next door and asked if he wanted to come over for leftover turkey. The trials took 8 months. Monica was charged with aggravated assault. Attempted murder, the prosecutor argued the push down the stairs could have been fatal given my age, and financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult. Her previous marriage to Harold Swanson was introduced as evidence of a pattern of behavior. His family was finally able to testify about their suspicions. She was convicted on all counts. The judge, Honorable Maria Sanchez, 28 years on the bench, called her a predator who targeted elderly men with calculated cruelty. She got 15 years in state prison. Jeffrey was charged with conspiracy to commit assault, financial exploitation, and elder abuse. His lawyer tried to argue that he was under Monica's influence, that he was manipulated, that he was as much a victim as I was. The jury watched the video of him laughing at my pain. They didn't buy it. He got 7 years. Julian Price was disbarred for his role in the conservatorship scheme. Karen and Deborah both provided testimony about the conversations Monica had with them regarding my mental decline, conversations that now looked very different in light of her arrest. The money, the $280,000 they'd stolen from me, was ordered returned as part of the restitution. I'd never see most of it. They'd already spent it, but that was okay. The money had never been the point. I live alone now, by choice. Frank comes over for dinner every Sunday. His wife died 2 years before Eleanor, so we're both learning how to cook for ourselves. Last last week, we made a beef stew that was almost as good as Eleanor's. I volunteer at the Elder Abuse Prevention Center every Tuesday and Thursday. Tell my story to groups of seniors who need to hear that this can happen to anyone, that the people you trust most can be the ones who hurt you worst. How did you know? Someone always asks. How did you figure out what they were doing? I paid attention, I tell them. When something felt wrong, I didn't ignore it. I investigated. I documented. And when I had proof, I acted. It's not much advice, but it's something. Last month, I got a letter from Jeffrey, written from his cell in state prison, asking for forgiveness, asking me to understand that Monica had manipulated him, that he'd never meant for things to go so far, that he was still my son. I read it once. Then I burned it in the fireplace, in the same living room where Eleanor and I had built 38 years of memories. He made his choice when he watched his wife push me down the stairs and laughed. Some things can't be forgiven. Some betrayals are forever. But here's the thing about betrayal. It doesn't have to define you. I'm 68 now, living in my house, with my memories, with the life Eleanor and I built together. I have friends. I have purpose. I have peace. My son tried to destroy me. His wife tried to kill me. They thought I was weak, confused, easy prey. They were wrong. I'm Marcus Whitmore. I survived 40 years of marriage, 38 years of parenthood, and 14 months as a widower. I survived my son's betrayal and my daughter-in-law's violence and the worst Christmas of my life. And I'm still here, still standing, still living. That's the best revenge of all, isn't it? Not the arrest, not the conviction, not the prison sentences, just this. They tried to take everything from me, and I'm still here. Eleanor would be proud. I raised my wine glass at Christmas dinner and told them dinner was over. But really, it was just beginning. My life, my terms, my ending. They thought they were writing my story. Turns out, I was writing theirs.